In this video, I'm going to be walking through how we build cold email lead lists for client campaigns. And through this method, we're able to target the right people, hit less than 1% on bounce rates, and achieve above 4% reply rates. So if you're tired of scraping Apollo databases, getting responses like stop emailing me, wrong person, hitting bounce rates that are very high, and you're re-emailing the same 500 people, definitely stick around, because this is what you'll get when you find out about the 7-stage process. You'll get fresh data every single time. You'll be able to source any public directory out there. And essentially, this process is so cheap that you'll save about 85 to 96% of cost savings. So these are the 7 stages that it takes from market research to a import ready list. I'll walk through each step of the process, also showing examples. And typically it'll take you about 2 to 3 hours, depending on how many times you've been through this process, to get a complete list that you could send out a copy to. So stage 1 would be finding a public business directory. So currently what's happening right now in your workflow, you're probably restricted to one database that you pay around $300 a month. Second, you're probably sourcing leads from Apollo and Zoom info databases. And a big issue with that is all of these databases rely on LinkedIn for their info, okay? And we want to go beyond that. So the goal is finding databases like Google Maps, Yelp, Chamber of Commerce, okay? Basically any site that shows company names and domains. And then this method will heavily differentiate you from the rest and help you reach out to more untapped leads. For example, I went to clutch.com, I selected top commercial real estate companies, and I clicked the AI web scraper and I went ahead and exported a list of company names and domains. And you could also add any other variables that you would like to add. For example, it would be great to have the company info for some sort of personalization, and so on and so forth. Moving on to stage 2, let's just say if you already have a list of company names and domains, you could skip ahead this stage, but this is for, let's say, if you want to source Google Maps or using Phantom Buster, Outscraper, tools like that to basically source Instagram followers, LinkedIn, and etc. Right? So in this example, I'm going to be following Google Maps, okay? And we're going to be using a tool called Outscraper, and it's a very easy tool that you could just input your variables into, and it'll give you an export of the company's list. All right, so in this process, I would say to go to a LLM, input this prompt over here. It walks through, I'm building a lead list, who you're targeting, what you need to find, and essentially what Claude outputs is a filter spec. So you basically just take this copy, okay, and you paste it into Outscraper, and this will be your filters for the companies. Now moving on to stage 3 is where you scrape business data with Outscraper or Appify or whatever you're using. Okay, and these tools are very helpful because they pull structured Google Maps data, and you could scrape by zip codes, location, or even geographic distance. Here's an example of how the inputs looked filled in, and below picking filters like if you want to target with websites or without websites or a certain review range. Now by this stage, you should have a list of company names and domains. So the next step would be taking that list and importing it into Clay. From there, running a Claygent prompt for where you could find up to 2 decision makers per company, okay? You could create this prompt in Claude or GPT, walk back and forth on the market you're targeting, the offer you have, and kind of disqualifiers that you want to implement. And here's an example of how the prompt looks in Clay. To heavily save on credits, I would suggest picking your own account key. Do not rely on using your own Clay credits. And with this method, you're gonna basically find like 99% of contacts online, and you're able to also find second contacts at that company if possible. And the cost of this is so dirt cheap. All right, so for example, let's say you're buying lead lists from traditional databases like Apollo, Zoom info. Extracting, let's say, 10,000 contacts will cost you around 2,000 to 5,000. All right, and then if you use Outscraper and Phantom Buster, because along with scraping company domains and names, you could also enrich their contact. But using that method, you'd spend around 100. Obviously, that's a massive decrease, but who wouldn't want it more cheaper, right? So our workflow, the cost of it, as you can see, is dirt cheap over here. And this is for 2 contacts. So a price per 1 contact is basically barely a cent. And the total cost for, let's say, 10,000 contacts will get you $15. So by this stage, you should have company name, company domain, and the decision makers, their first name, last name, job title, any LinkedIn URLs or social URLs you have extracted, all right? Now from this, you'll want to find the emails, okay? In Clay, there's a very simple waterfall enrichment tool, and this is where it basically takes the full name, the company domain, and does permutations to find the exact email and verify it, okay? So here's an example of how the waterfall looks. You can see it goes through ICPs first, Lead Magic second, and Prospeo third. And some of them will have emails found or not found, and that's the point of the waterfall. And let's say if there's no email found, luckily enough, no credits are charged. So I will heavily suggest when you're also connecting your enrichments to set up your API key for each platform, because it's so dirt cheap compared to using your Clay credits. And let's just say if you weren't able to find emails from the waterfall method, this process takes a step further, and you could input a prompt that goes in and finds any possible email you could contact the decision maker with. And do not worry if it's like generated by AI or it's not reliable enough. We run this list through a verifier, so you don't need to really worry about that. The goal right now is to get as many contacts as we can from our work. So the penultimate stage would be verifying your full list with MillionVerifier or Bounceman. All right, so your goal would be exporting the Clay table and running the email list through these platforms, okay? And this is how it looked like. It'll give you a quality rating on how many are risky, bad, and good. A rule of thumb I would say is the emails that are good, amazing, send them to. Segment your risky catch-all emails and create another campaign for them and send them out, and completely delete the bad emails, obviously. Now, when it comes to the final stage, it would be actually cleaning and formatting the final list in Claude Code. About like 3 weeks ago, we used to do this manually, and tech is improving at a rapid rate, so thankfully we're able to clean list in this way. Very easy, just drop in your CSV and you could just instruct it to clean up the columns, splits the decision makers in one row into two if they're at the same company contacts, and also delete any duplicates. So your final output should look like this, and then you could use all this data to further enrich the leads and get personalization lines. But ultimately, every tool does one job, nothing ever overlaps, and through this process, you're able to tap into a untapped market of contacts that you could reach out to, and you could not bother sourcing leads from Apollo or any of those databases that you probably pay like $300 a month for. So if you'd like this build for your next campaigns, head to the link below and we'll contact you to schedule your audit.